we are in the middle of this weird culture war, and I came up last night on Twitter with this amazing idea that if our mainstream media were going to call Kellie-Jay and all the women who got assaulted on Saturday anti-trans, we should probably call the news media anti-straight. But of course, woke Twitter went crazy at that idea. But something is wrong here, and it would seem to me if the Rainbow crowd think they had a massive victory in whatever war they are fighting in their heads on Saturday, they were probably wrong. And interestingly enough, someone who tends to swing from the left agrees with me, I think. That's Martyn Bomber Bradbury, who joins us now. How are you, mate?
Comrade, good morning. How you doing?
Very well. You've been writing some interesting stuff. You've sort of been a bit JFK-ish. Victory may be ashes in their mouths.
Oh, I think that what happened on Saturday was an appalling example of what happens when emotion runs too high. And the vibe I got from the entire place, Sean, was everyone who'd ever been bullied for being different all their life all turned up with some revenge fantasy against their bully. And it became frenetic. Look, I'm no fan of Posie Parker. I think that she's an anger grifter. I think she has whipped up these things. But I think that she is very much a manifestation of what happens when you don't allow debate to occur and you use cancel culture rather than open debate. Because she's only a thing because so many of the woke activists police any debate about trans online as if it's some type of cult, and it doesn't allow for people to have genuinely held concerns to have a voice on these things. Look, I want our trans whānau to have as much agency as every other citizen, because that's the promise of a democracy, right? We're all going to get equal rights, and we can all go about our day. But
Marty, you telling me it wasn't a love fest? Because that's what Marama told me. That's what Chloe told me, that it was just a wonderful unicorn day out in the park.
And this is the problem.
That's
right?
what Tova told me. Tova told me it was a beautiful coming together of love.
And this is the problem, right? I think, the people who really want to virtue signal this and want to be in there and, show their support, I'm sure it comes from a good place. But the virtue signaling of this, they say it was pure trans joy. What most New Zealanders sitting at home watching that appalling violence erupt, and this woman being assaulted and chased off the stage, like literally chased from the public square, right? All of those New Zealanders watch that going, who was the victim again? Who was in danger? And I think the damage, they do not understand outside their echo chambers, echo bunkers. They don't understand outside their echo bunkers how this is playing to the rest of New Zealand. Most New Zealanders, most Kiwis, are such a laid-back people and are quite nice to one another. They will refer to whoever, whatever pronoun, however most people want to, are asking for, demanding. Yeah. Most people are that, right? But but they do have questions about, and particularly a lot of those old-school 1970s lesbians who turned up to support Posie Parker, right? I mean, how can you say those women don't deserve a voice on feminism? They marched for feminism. They created under what we understand as feminism. They fought for it, and for them, and for for those women, there is a legitimate philosophical and intellectual debate to be had about biological women being forced to accept what are biological men presenting as women in their spaces, in their changing rooms, in their gyms, in their prison cells. Now, for you and me, Sean, certainly for me, I'm happy to say this. Look, if a trans person wish to share a cell with me, or a gym changing room, or a swimming pool changing room, that I've got no problem, because I'm not physically intimidated by that interaction, right? I'm going to probably be the bigger of the two, right? But you can understand how some biological woman would have serious concerns about that. And they're allowed to have those concerns, and they're allowed to have those concerns heard, and they're allowed to have those concerns actually responded responsibly and legitimately as well. But that's not what happened on Saturday. What happened on Saturday wasn't a protest, it was mob rule. and watching so many on the left in the wake of that, people who I respect, trying to justify the violence that was meted out is I think, beneath the mana of the left.
Okay, Bomber, what about Marama Davidson and the motorcycle on the grassy knoll?
Marama. I mean, I saw that piece go. I saw Counterspin had got it, and I don't think they really understood the enormity of what they had. I think they were trying to argue about what is a woman. I think that was what Hannah. So I picked that piece up, and we published it first, and then Kiwi Blog linked to it, and everyone was on. And I said in the very original piece, obviously Marama, our minister, who's speaking from a ministerial position. So this is government policy for 30 seconds. So let's go down here. I sort of said, I think obviously the minister misspoke because, I mean, factually that's not true. If you look at the top 10 countries for crime,
let's not fall down that rabbit hole.
Exactly. So obviously the minister misspoke. Now the problem, of course, I mean that's the justification you put forward. The problem, of course, is that most people listening to her would have gone, no, that's what she believes. And
it clearly is what she believes, Martyn.
And then you get onto all sorts of problems of, is this now becoming Marama's materia moment? You know?
And that's the materia Ture, of course, resigned because she dodged her welfare payments or lied about her welfare payments. That's right.
And the problem there, remember, was not that she'd announced it and been honest about it and come out and gave this very moving story about it. And it did get the group quite a bit of support initially. It was then that she hadn't actually followed up and gone to the ministry and said, well, how much do I owe you?
Yeah. Well, she was a crook. She was a lawyer and she was a crook. She was a fraudster.
She didn't that, and that was the problem. It's like, and so I think Marama here has said something that she honestly believes. And
I got to say, I wouldn't like to have those assholes from Counterspin in my face. I'd probably just pop them on the nose.
Let's not give them any love. Let's not give them any respect. This is ambush journalism at its worst, right?
Yeah, I agree.
This is the lowest quality kind of journalism. This is like turning up on someone's door, knocking and filming.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
So put that aside. But this is. It looks bad. It feels bad. It tastes bad to a lot of white cis men. Many who will be saying,
but then let's get to about her excuse. Well, first of all, she said apparently she saw a doctor. That's all very unclear. And that this was because, and her excuse to Chris Hipkins was, I'd just been hit by a motorcycle. I was physically traumatised.
That is the minister's defence. Yes.
Well, we've now then got to establish when she was hit by the motorcycle and how severely. There is some grainy footage of her taking a selfie in the middle of the street and a motorcycle going by and her looking like she's being clipped. There's also some pictures of her seemingly prepared for that with a whole lot of padding underneath her shirt.
Oh, look, I don't. Okay, I mean, I think that we're getting into the counterspin style of journalism.
Okay,
I don't know what the.
Well, why doesn't she give us an accurate timeline? Why don't we know who the medical professional who she stood was? Because look, I'm sorry to most New Zealanders, Martyn, it sounds like bullshit.
Oh, hey! I'm not saying it's not, right? But I can't. I mean, she said something she probably believes. I'm far more concerned about the state of the economy that we are going into this year. I am far more concerned about the state of housing. The infrastructure is groaning to its absolute collapse. I'm seeing people very desperate and a lot of businesses being pushed to the edge. We're 6 months out from an election. You know, Treasury's pretty much said the recession's coming and we are getting lost in this garbage. You know, she said something stupid that she probably believes. I'm rolling my eyes so many times she talks, I can see in the back of my head. I just want to get on to the actual bloody issues now.
Yeah, okay, but we're not. We're in a culture war. And we're here.
Yeah, I know. We are locked into this culture war.
Yeah. Look, just while we're there, Stuart Nash, idiot. Hey.
The thing is, the Nashy, sons out, guns out, the Nashy. We know the Nashy. We've all had a beer with the Nashy. Bless him, he's just too thick for the kind of corruption that he's been suggested with here. Honestly, here's what I think. No, I'm being hand on heart. I don't think it was an Intel for donations thing at all. I think he's stupid enough, honestly, to big note to his mates. I mean, you look at that whole nonsense on ZB. He was trying to do his macho man routine with Mike Hosking, and then just blurted out in the middle of the interview. Oh, yeah, by the way.
All right. And look, at the end of the day, whether or not Stuart Nash is in Cabinet makes bugger all difference to the lifeblood of this country, does it?
Well, actually, let's look at this. Right now, Stuart Nash has always had a bit of a fancy for being a leader of a party. You'll remember he got busted. Being entangled in that business with Lusk. Yeah. Looking at setting up a possible new party about a dozen years ago. That was when Dirty Politics came out. He was sort of doing stuff there. What happens if Winston comes to him and says...
Well, I've already predicted this morning that there will be an approach from New Zealand First to Stuart Nash.
Of course there would. Of course there would.
Yeah.
Of course there would. And he would win it. Because people love the Nashy. Guns out, guns out. You know?
Yep. I gotcha. All right.
He's Mr. Party Man. And I think Winston would far prefer Stuart Nash to be the leader than the current crocodile he's got of Shane Jones, you know? Yeah. I mean, I think Winston would feel far better having the Nash being the new leader of New Zealand First moving forward.
Oh, no, he's just making... Well, no. My understanding, too, there'll be a definitive announcement about Shane Jones' involvement with the New Zealand First Party in the next couple of weeks.
Oh, really?
Yes, there will be. I can tell you that.
Okay.
You heard that here first.
Right.
Look for around...
But certainly, I mean, the fact that these emails got out certainly looks like somebody is trying to push Nash in a direction where...
Oh, no, I know how the emails came out, Martyn.
Oh, right.
And I think people have to ask Luxon, if this is such a terrible thing, how long did you know about this before it came out? And it essentially came out via the National Party, and I know how and who by, but it's not actually important to the country or the story. It's just that horrible train spotting insider dirt. Look, I've had quite an interesting week. Can I tell you, the platform's had an amazing week in terms of audience and subscription and people following us this week. It is.
Well, I think that you're prepared to have the debate, Sean. That's the difference. That's the difference, you know? Yeah. And it's robust debate.
And I've got to say, I have been deeply disappointed in our mainstream media and some of the players in it for constantly... Well, they deliberately did name TVNZ Posie Parker, called her Rosie Parker on Saturday night. She has constantly been called an anti-transgender activist. And if we are prepared to put up with that from the Herald, from One News, from News Hub, from Stuff, of course, from the Spin-Off and Radio New Zealand and everyone else, can we call them anti-straight media? Can we call them anti-woman media? Because it would seem to me that source for the goose is source for the gander.
Well, and this is, I think, this is what drives culture war, right? It's the hypocrisy. The hypocrisy of claiming that this was a peaceful protest when it was a mob that got out of hand. And what's interesting about it is that down the road you had Brian Tamaki, who was actively protesting against trans issues, who was actively being very... But where did the crowd decide to go? They decided to push around the girl because they could do that.
And they did try and push around Brian Tamaki in his game. We've got Hannah Tamaki on after you. And that's a little bit more difficult. They are not going to take kindly to the tomato sauce, are they?
Right. So they were prepared to do it with someone who couldn't fight back. I mean, look, when I was at university, I took on organisations and led protests against organisations that were powerful and could fight back. The Auckland University, Ministry of Education, the police many times, the government many more times, the mass surveillance state, and I got scars because that's what happens when you fight real power. It fights back.
Yeah.
That's not what happened on Saturday. A mob terrorised a woman and a bunch of people who turned up to watch her and forced them off. It was the thug's veto. That's not what a liberal progressive democracy needs to look like.
Yeah, but
And
we have
watching
to understand, Bomber, don't you understand that transphobia is a direct result of colonisation, according to Paul Hunt?
And this is the problem of living in absolutes and living in this black and white world. In a world that isn't black and white, there's many, many shades of grey and require far more nuance. That's not what's going on. It's just a screaming match. And I fear that we're going to see the true ramifications of Saturday in the polls. I think the Greens are going to take a hiding, and I think that ACT is the only winner.
Yeah. Look, the other interesting thing is that the women's vote, Labour-owned with Jacinda Ardern, and it's an important vote, the swinging woman voter. I just wonder if that hasn't taken a huge hit too.
Oh, I think you're right. I think you're absolutely right. I think that very swing vote, 50-plus women, white, tertiary educated, I think they would have looked at those scenes and gone, who's the victim here? Who's the winner? Who's the loser? I think it would have. I think it will have impacted things, and that's why I think.
And finally, Bomber, news today that Eli Robskin, who came here as a world's first transgender refugee or asylum seeker, left the country last night for Australia. And this morning, we understand the police are saying they've issued an arrest warrant. The police have just been bloody pathetic at the time and in response, right?
The police have been pathetic from the very beginning. It was absolutely clear the moment. Look, I was standing there directly in the middle of the protest. Posie Parker walked past me. I could have reached out and touched her as she was going to the rotunda. Her security were having to fight and jostle every step of the way. It took almost a full 5 minutes to just get to the rotunda, and she was getting jostled and pushed and shoved and stuff thrown at her all the way to get there. Then when she finally got there, the crowds surged past the very ill-constructed fences. They got knocked down very quickly. They surrounded her and they started charging into the rotunda. She's getting pelted and attacked the whole way. When she finally got out, it was obvious. It was obvious the police should have moved in about 5 minutes into it and gotten her out of there. They had lost control of things that quickly, and the temperature rose so fast. The police should have, when they realised how bad things had gotten, they should have come to the rotunda and then taken her out. That's what they should have done. They didn't do that, and so they were pathetic on the day. And I think, they're not taking this seriously because they don't want the flack that's going to occur if they do a prosecution.
Yeah. Hey, Bomber, I know you were there. It's good to hear from a bloke who was there. We've heard a lot from the women who were there, and their stories have been horrific. Thank you very much for being there. And we need to correct something that Chris Trotter said. I was not at the protest on Saturday, and come Sunday, I was too scared to go to the one in Wellington, to be honest. Hey, yeah? Good on you, Bomber. Thank you for your time. That is Martyn Bomber Bradbury and his perspectives on that. He's a lefty. And he thinks they stuffed up too.